For many Americans, student loan debt and trying to repay it has been an issue for a while. However, the Biden-Harris administration has announced a new plan to forgive student loans. Here to talk more about this is Becca Craig from Buckingham Strategic Wealth. Welcome, Becca.
Hello, thanks for having me today. Exciting times.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah, this is a topic that I'm definitely very interested in as a student who's going through loan debt and stuff like that. Um, yeah, so before we get into this new plan, earlier on in the year, Biden proposed another student loan forgiveness initiative, which is the limited PSLF waiver. And that deadline's coming up in October, I believe. So can we talk about what is PSLF and why is there this temporary expansion?
Absolutely. In the past 365 days, there's been three major overhauls with a joint effort between the Biden-Harris administration and the Department of Education to make more efficient the pathways to forgiveness, both through public service loan forgiveness, as well as the income-driven repayment plan forgiveness strategies. More on that later. So backing up, right around this time last year, the Biden administration with the Department of Education announced the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Waiver. For many years, the program, which was actually a lame duck initiative in the Bush administration, so back in 2007, 2008, when the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program was originally initiated and created, which is, in its very essence, after 10 years of either continuous or non-continuous public service, so working for a qualified employer, using, at the time, a qualified repayment plan for, at the time, qualified loans. After 120 payments towards your student loans while working for set employers, using set repayment plans under those certain loans, then your loans would be forgiven or canceled income tax free. Over the past 15 years, there's been various private, public, government reports of the inefficiencies and roadblocks that borrowers have experienced in receiving forgiveness. And so most recently, there was by the Government Accountability Office, there was one report that said out of all the different individuals that applied for public service loan forgiveness, only 1% received forgiveness, because the large majority of individuals that had or would have qualified either used repayment plans that weren't income-driven repayments, so they were not qualified under that leg or that arm of the requirement, or they were paying on FFEL loans or other types of non-qualifying federal loans, or they just were confused with how to submit the employer certification form. So all these different aspects and complications and complexities that really went into what was essentially at its very core a way for public servants and those that are in government, education, healthcare related. Almost 25% of borrowers qualify for public service loan forgiveness based on their current employment. So a large sector of the American workforce to be able to alleviate the emotional and financial burden of student loan debt and repayment got really complex. And so back in October 2021, the Biden-Harris administration announced the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Waiver, which basically said, if you would have otherwise qualified for PSLF, but did not receive it because you were not using a qualifying repayment plan under a qualifying loan and submit qualifying forms, we're waiving those requirements for you. If you submit the employment certification form and upload that to your servicer for us to recount and requalify your loans. The only stipulation was for those that have FFEL loans or Perkins loans, those had to be consolidated into direct loans first in order to then have all the other qualifications waived, so to speak. And so over the past year, those of us that are in the student loan planning community have been very excited and urging borrowers to apply and make sure that their loans are qualifying, they need to consolidate, and to really utilize this opportunity. I've had the honor and the privilege of working with dozens of borrowers to receive over millions of dollars of forgiveness, and a lot of my colleagues in the industry as well. Because it's there, we should be taking advantage of the waiver. The only qualification is that the waiver or the employment certification form, which is the waiver, needs to be submitted by October 31st of this year. It needs to be submitted and received to MOHELA, which as of this summer is the new administrator for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. It's not FedLoan anymore. So big push for that.
And so how do you go about applying for this waiver?
Yeah, great question. And so whether it's through the Federal Student Aid Office as well as the Department of Education has created what they have, I enjoy the name, the PSLF Ninja. It's a tool on their website that you can log into your FSA account, and using the PSLF Ninja, select, they'll ask you questions of, do you have XY loans, or are you currently on an income-driven repayment plan? And based on that flowchart of information that borrowers submit, they will then tell you the exact next steps to be able to apply. And so for those individuals that they knew that they weren't going to qualify because they weren't using a certain repayment plan, or they were planning to pay all their student loans down because there's a litany of reasons. Basically, if you still have direct loans and you work for a qualifying employer or have worked for a qualifying employer for any amount of time, it would be in someone's best interest to at least apply for the waiver to see how many qualified payments you actually receive under it. There's no requirement to continue income-driven repayment plans. There's no requirement that you have to continue pursuing the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. But by going to the tool, the Ninja, the PSLF Ninja, that will give borrowers a really direct and specific route to their application, because it really is going to come down to what have you done so far and what do we still need from you. So I would urge all borrowers to go to the website and to figure out their next steps.
Definitely. So that's the PSLF waiver. So what is this new student loan plan that's been introduced? And how is it different than what we just talked about?
Yeah. And what was this, 2 weeks ago, last week? Time has been crazy since what is arguably one of the most landmark successes of the Biden-Harris administration, not only delivering on the promise to cancel student loan debt, but also extend the freeze and create a new income-driven repayment plan. So really there's three parts to the new debt relief order of August 2022. So the first part being is that the pandemic era or CARES Act student loan payment freeze for both interest and principal payments is going to be extended one final time. Like, this is it. And I have said this, and I've written articles for the street saying this might be the last one, but this actually, the seventh one, is going to be the last extension of the payment freeze until January 1st, allowing for the administration, the servicers, and borrowers to get organized on really what the future of their repayment plans look like. That's the first part. The second part is student loan debt forgiveness cancellation for borrowers based on their 2021 AGI. So for those individuals, as well as those that file head of household and married filing separate, if your adjusted gross income was under $125,000 in 2021, then you will receive $10,000 of forgiveness. If you also at any point during your education career received a Pell Grant, there's an additional $10,000 of forgiveness, so a total of $20,000. For those filing in 2021, married filing jointly, if the couple's joint income is less than $250,000, then they would qualify for that $10,000. And if either one of them had a Pell Grant at any point, that borrower would receive an additional $10,000. And
So
then the third part, oh,
yeah, no, go ahead, go
there's a lot,
ahead.
there's a lot,
Yeah.
there's so much there. And then just really the third part, and this is the gray area of, we know it's been announced, there's not too much information, and really the student loan planning community is really on, not pins and needles, but really excited and waiting for, what does this new income-driven repayment plan look like? Is it the, an offshoot of what was proposed in December of 2021? Is this something completely different? What is that? We know that it only applies to undergraduate loans, but it's really meant to be to lessen the overall payment for those going for either public service loan forgiveness or income-driven repayment forgiveness. So you have the second piece. So everyone benefits from the first part. I know it, the freeze is continued. The second part of the act really is geared towards those that we're aiming towards full repayment, because it's forgiving those lump sum amounts. And then the third piece being, if you're going for public service loan forgiveness or income-driven repayment forgiveness, this might be a more viable option for those borrowers that maybe have a smaller amount of debt overall or undergraduate debt, or it's really aimed towards those lower and middle income earners that are seeking relief, as opposed to, I need to pay this off, but I don't know how I'm going to do that with my monthly income flow. So I think that's it for now.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So one question that I've seen a lot of people ask is that perhaps they might have already put down some money towards their loans and it becomes less than that $10,000 amount. So does it happen to work retroactively to those who already paid? Do they get money back?
Yeah, so this has been a really big conversation piece for borrowers and the student loan specialist planning community at large, that we know for sure that the loans have to, in order to qualify for forgiveness, they have to have originated before June 30th, 2022. So sometimes we get the question of, well, what if I just go take out loans and get it? So that's not possible. Don't do that. Don't just take out loans, even if that's not really how it works. But if that was a thought, there's other thoughts to be had. Don't do that. So no new loans will qualify for the forgiveness, but if an individual, because the administration has not yet, and they said, we will be, by the end of October, we will have a link that borrowers can click on and submit their request for forgiveness. Because right now the government really only has an income picture of about 45% of borrowers, because those borrowers are in income-driven repayment plans. The rest of borrowers that have direct public loans, they do not, because they might have been paying on an extended, graduated, or standard repayment plan. So those borrowers will need to take an additional step to receive cancellation and submit their income, either it's probably a tax return or approval to seek a tax return for 2021. And that has been blatantly laid out on the administration's page. Because there has been no definitive statement, ruling, instructions from the Biden administration at this point in regards to, well, if I paid off all my loans in May and I would have received this forgiveness, we don't know at this point. And so I would encourage those borrowers, just as we'll be doing on the professional side, to, before taking unilateral action, whether that's requesting refunds of their payments or just to pause and until we have more clarity around that matter. And again, this is changing rapidly. Like there's been announcements and updates, and it's very rapidly, from a standpoint of policy and government, very rapid. It might not feel like that, it's not happening quick enough, but really from an executive and as well as administrative standpoint, it's moving pretty quick. So by the time our conversation gets published, it might be completely different. But right now, today, on the 6th of September, we don't have clear guidelines from the administration. And so at this point, it's really just going to be a wait and see game for those borrowers that did pay off their loans in this given time period, who would have otherwise qualified for cancellation.
Yeah. So what about applying for this plan? Is there a way yet, or has that been announced?
Yeah, so for those individuals that have already submitted their income, or they have an income picture based on their income-driven repayment plans, the government already has their income numbers. But for those individuals that have not submitted, or the government does not have technically, the Department of Education doesn't have their income amounts, a link will be made available on the Department of Education's website. They've said sometime in October. And that's all we know at this point. So stay tuned. There is a way that borrowers can actually go to the Department of Education's newsletter subscription page and subscribe to receive an alert when the link becomes available. So if there's one action that can be taken, it's just to sign up for the notification that the application for cancellation is available, and then wait for that link to become available to submit the request for cancellation.
Yeah, thank you. So we covered a lot here. Is there anything else that you want to talk about this plan, about the PSLF waiver? Anything about that we missed or that you want to go over again?
No, I think that's great. To your point that there's so much there, and it is a rapidly evolving arena of how do I navigate this program or this option, or what does the future look like in general for me, that because it's really a rapidly evolving, and while there's taking steps to simplify, it's still a complex area of financial planning. I would just encourage all borrowers to either reach out to, there are phenomenal student loan planners that are certified in this specific area, to reach out to one of the specialist communities or a specialist in the area to be able to partner with other individuals that really know the groundwork and the layout of student loan repayment, and that they don't need to go in alone. That there's help available, a lot of pro bono, as well as paid services, so that you don't feel like you're wading through all the complexity by yourself. Because a lot of times when it's overwhelming, and as student loan debt is, and it just feels heavy. And so to lighten that burden, just to reach out and partner with others so that you can all create the best possible optimal plan going forward.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Becca, for your insight and
Thanks for having me.
answering my questions. Yeah.